Hello friends, welcome to my channel. I'm going to talk about the collapse of Soviet Union, the true reasons behind the dissolution of this superpower. First, I want to say, while the Western leaders claim the collapse of Soviet Union is their victory of the Cold War, this is completely wrong, because in effect, the Cold War ends not when the Soviet Union is dissolved, but it ends 2 years prior to that. To the contrary of people's impression, the President of the United States, Bush, wanted the individual Soviet countries to still stay together in a kind of loose confederation instead of breaking apart. So now there come to the question, why this former superpower collapsed over a very short period of time. In only a few years, it fell down from its prime. There were hundreds of books touched on this topic, yet I didn't find a single book which can give a true and unbiased analysis towards the cause of this issue. So here I want to offer my own views. I think the fall of Soviet Union is not because of the external pressure. It's not because of the armament race. It is not because of the stagnation of its economic growth. The true reason behind its downfall is within the Soviet Union. Its top party apparatus has completely abandoned their faith in communism, in socialism. They have become greedy capitalists. And since they hold strategic important positions in the Soviet Union, they made advantage of their position, manipulated this country into dissolution. If only you understand this, you will not be surprised why there were so many oligarchies today and in the past existed in the Russian Federation after the collapse of Soviet Union. Those oligarchies, they control the key strategic companies in Russian Federation. Those state-run enterprises has privatized almost overnight and become the assets of those oligarchies. This cannot be achieved with the help from within the government. And in effect, lots of the top Soviet Union government officials, they almost become successful capitalists, successful businessmen successful entrepreneur overnight. They become billionaires and they fully emerged into the Western mainstream capitalism without any difficulty. And this gives them vast amount of wealth. In fact, all this wealth belonged to the Soviet people. But through the tricky process of privatization, those wealth were put into the pockets, deep pockets of only a handful of people. The closer those who are close to Yeltsin, they benefit the most. And this explains why the referendum conducted before the Soviet Union dissolution, it shows that more than 70% of Soviet citizens opted for the preservation of this union. They do not want the dissolve of this union. They still want to keep together, to live under a single flag. All they want is some kind of alternation to the economic system, because at that time, due to the manipulation of those who are in control, the daily life of Soviet people become more and more difficult. The economic hardship encourage people to think about reform. So they want some kind of reform, but they do not want to break apart this once prestigious superpower. However, people's will is completely ignored. When Yeltsin and his allies and those who back up him, they form a kind of small group, small but powerful. They ousted Gorbachev and they completely control the Russian state, which is a core state in the Soviet Union. So with its very core, so Russia wanted, or rather gestured, to separate from Soviet Union, then it is impossible to keep this once formidable union as a whole. And why this happened? My analysis is that from the 1970s, there's a trend in the Soviet bureaucratic system that those who hold the power, hold the important position, they want to keep it as long as possible. Back in the Lenin's day, or back in the older days, those positions are regularly rotated. People in such position, they remain there for a few years and then they are rotated to some other position and the new people will come in. However, this healthy practice was somewhat neglected. So there were so many times that people who managed to squeeze into that prestigious those positions, be it top manager of a large state-run enterprise or a governor of some important state, whatever it is, those top jobs, they can keep it until their retirement. In many cases, they are able to keep it until their death. This brings a very negative impact, is that they are able to set up a small, tightly knitted circle around them inside this particular organization, so that they can exert their influence. They can be almost kind of semi-dictator of that organization, owing to the long time occupation of the boss job. And from that period onwards, those people not only want to keep position for themselves for their lifetime, the next natural step is to try to pass down this position into his family, into the successor of his choosing, so that they can still benefit from it after their retirement or after their death. So, in the later years of Soviet Union, this once so-called communism country has become somewhat semi-capitalist country and I should say, there's some kind of feudalism going on in the small circles. But the extent is not big. So there is still opposition within the Soviet Communist Party. The mainstream of the Soviet Communist Party, they wanted some kind of reform, the healthy reform, not the ones conducted by Gorbachev, those completely westernized election, only brought about chaos, only brought about confusion. So the mainstream communist parties members, they wanted reform. And the ideal of that reform is to going back to the good old days, to those practice, reduced the power of the top official, to rebalance the distribution and to bring more influence for the people on the ground to the decision made by the organization. It is a trend, but the people like Yeltsin, they saw it as a threat, and they want to stop it, but they can't. What did they do? Naturally, they cannot win from within, so they leverage the help, the power, the influence from outside, especially from Europe, from the United States. How ironic. So from that, you will not be surprised to see how close the relationship is between the Yeltsin and Bush. Supposedly, these two enemy states, however, the head of the state developed such good personal relationship. I would say it is not personal. It is only because Yeltsin saw it beneficial to him that he can use influence, leverage the foreign power to battle against his oppositions in the Soviet Communist Party. Doubtless, without good leaders, even those oppositions they consists a majority of the Soviet Communist Party, but the lack of good leadership, strong leadership. So the August coup failed miserably. This is on the last serious attempt to keep the Soviet Union. So, in short, the bad guys win. The bad guys in the Soviet Communist Party win. They successfully turned this once communist country into a capitalist country, and in the process privatized the crown jewels of its assets to become their personal asset. So they become the oligarchy, they become the billionaire, and they are the one in control of power, wealth, wow, at the expense of common people. The economic hardship for the common people of former Soviet Union become unbearable in the 1990s. The situation only improved after early 21st century. It is no doubt a tragedy, and I wish we should remember this. It taught us, Chinese people, a valuable lesson. We should never entrust the power, too much power, to the persons who have no confidence in communism, to the persons who have no faith in the upholding of the nation. It is very dangerous to have those kind of people in the top position. And I think the Chinese Communist Party has treated this subject very seriously. They have done well in the economic reform, to a large extent avoid fate of Soviet Union. Yes, my friends, this is my true, honest opinion on the collapse of Soviet Union.